Welcome back to Or Something Like That, the podcast where you can talk shit with your besties. We're your besties and your hosts, Sam
and Hollis. Thanks for being here. Now let's start the show. Well, if we talk about it for a long time, we could just make it a special bulletin or something.
It ends with us.
Yeah. Update?
Yes. So, okay. I said what I said.
I said what I said,
I said what I said in the previous episodes. I'm trying to remember. I feel like we only talked about it on 2 episodes. The episode where I read the complaint, it wasn't the whole complaint. I mean, it was just what she had said had happened on set. Then we talked about it again in either the next episode or the one after that, because I had done like a little bit of research on Justin, because you had asked me like, what do you know about him? And I'm like, nothing. Like neither one of us knew who he was until this. Since then, I mean, so much has happened. There is so much. I mean, this might be like the biggest like pop culture legal thing that I can think of in the last like 20 years.
Really?
I mean, I'm trying to think of something that has like gotten this much attention and has had this many moving parts. And I can't.
Yeah. Since like OJ.
But I mean, that involves, I mean, I guess he was a celebrity. Yeah.
He's a huge celebrity.
He was a football player. Yeah.
I don't remember him being a celebrity, but I think he was a gigantic celebrity.
Yeah. I don't remember much about him as a football player.
Yeah. But I think he was like, became even more famous after that. Anyways, besides the point.
That was that more than 20 years ago though now?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, I can't think. OJ is the last thing I can think of. Yeah.
Because I mean, similar cases, I guess. Like it was like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, but like even this is like, there's just so many moving parts is the thing, and I think it's just so unique too. And so the first thing I want to say before we even like start talking about it is like, this is all our opinion. We're not legal professionals. This is opinion. It is based on alleged facts and information that is available to us. We're forming an opinion. I'm not a judge, and we're not the jury. I'm not necessarily speaking about this or trying to speak about this from an impartial viewpoint. I am trying to look at both sides of the story as objectively as I can, and then forming opinions. So this is an opinion. If you're looking for something where somebody is trying to talk about all of this impartially or unbiased, then this is not.
Good luck also.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I mean, you need to seek out, like, there are legal professionals that have podcasts and things that are talking about it.
Right.
The other things that I want to like point out before I start talking about what I've actually like read and some of the alleged facts is this case I feel like is so unique because there are because of the power dynamic that's going on here. There are 2 different power dynamics happening. There is the power dynamic in the industry as a whole, like the entertainment industry as a whole, because typically when you see a case of alleged sexual harassment, it is the accused that tends to hold all the power. In this particular case, when you look at it in the industry as a whole, really Blake Lively is kind of the more powerful Hollywood figure. Like, nobody really knew who he was until this whole thing, right? And I mean, he was in the industry. He was in like a CW show called Jane the Virgin, which I've not seen. And so, of course, he was in the industry, but he was not a household name. He's not an A-list celebrity. So Blake Lively and then, of course, adjacently, Ryan Reynolds are the more powerful Hollywood figures. But when you look at the power dynamics within the scope of the project alone, he is the producer, owns the production company, owns the movie essentially, is the director, and is the lead actor. So he has the power in the scope of just the project alone. So I think that makes the case really unique. And then the other thing is you have to think about the fact that when, like, Blake Lively didn't write her complaint, her attorneys did. Justin Baldoni didn't write his lawsuit, his attorneys did. So an attorney's job is literally to cherry pick and take different things, you know, out of context to build the best case for their client. I mean, they want to write the complaint that sheds their client in the best light. That's literally their job. So obviously, when you're reading Blake Lively's complaint, it's going to, you know, favor her. And same with Justin and his lawsuits. He has 2. He's suing the New York Times, and he's also suing Blake Lively and et al., you know. And then there's another lawsuit happening where the original publicist of the production company, Justin and Jamie Heath's production company, and them personally, is now suing the person that worked for her company that was like the point person and the crisis PR person that they hired. She's suing them. And it's like 250, 300 pages of documents. Because you have the publicist lawsuit, you have Blake Lively's lawsuit, you have Justin's 2 lawsuits. So there is a lot going on.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I feel like based on the information that was in the publicist lawsuit, all these email exchanges and things between the publicists, it is very clear to me, this is my opinion, that the smear campaign happened. They put that in motion. Something that, you know, Justin's camp is really adamant about is that all that negative publicity was just organic and just happened. I mean, I don't see how you can read the exchanges between these publicists and between Justin and Jamie Heath, who's the other owner in the production company, and not come to that conclusion. And clearly people are, though, because there's not a lot of people really on Blake's side, I don't feel like. At least,
yeah, that's the impression I get from everyone on the internet, which I have not done nearly as much sleuthing or research into it as you have, but whenever it comes up, it's always people talking shit about Blake Lively.
Yes.
And making like weird, you know, like making fun of her mannerisms or pulling up really weird clips as if they're proof, but just casting like judgments on her as a person, which just seems like so odd to me to be like, yeah, see, right here she's being a bitch, so that means she's guilty. Right. It's just like so pathetic.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you know, reading these exchanges and honestly just my personal experience with the way everything, the media just like turned on her, I personally do not believe it was organic. Now, here's the thing. This is not an unusual thing for publicists to do, right? This is not unusual. It's also not illegal. The thing that is illegal is workplace retaliation for bringing concerns to light and being retaliated against in the workplace for doing that. And that's what Blake Lively's lawsuit is. It's a harassment retaliation lawsuit. And one thing that I did find interesting that I didn't know is that the harassment claims don't even have to be true in order for there to be a retaliation lawsuit and for that to be a legitimate lawsuit. At this point, it doesn't even really matter. That's unfortunate because at the end of the day, I feel like that is kind of what matters most to me is like what actually took place on that set. And I just feel like it's so convoluted now with all of this stuff that's going on. We're probably never going to know. Really?
Yeah.
You know, and it's going to come down to who's more credible. And it's just really unfortunate. Now, another thing that I feel like is happening, and I feel like we've talked about this with other things too, 2 things can be true at the same time, right? And so far I've gotten through, I want to say like 75, 80 pages of Justin's attorney's, 179-page lawsuit. It's very heavily riding on this narrative that Blake was trying to take over the movie. Okay. She was doing all these rewrites and this and that. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that is true.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that she can't also be the victim of these things that she's saying took place.
Right.
Without, dragging this on too much and getting into a lot of the details, I don't find a lot of the things that Justin's camp has provided in terms of like refuting things that she has said or that her attorneys have said. I don't find those to be particularly compelling. I feel like it's a lot of just saying things around the thing, but it's like, okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that ABC. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see like what comes out in terms of like discovery and evidence and if it goes to trial.
I was gonna say, do you think anything will come out of it? Because it feels like to me kind of that this is going to be one of those things that like they sue each other back and forth forever and then eventually it fizzles, and this is going to be like a trial that happens in the social zeitgeist. Yeah. And that people have
it's the court of public opinion.
Yeah, people have already decided because they got married. Because I don't think they're Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have a great reputation. I think they
did though.
I don't think they did. They got married at that plantation, and I feel like since then, people have been like, they're rich white people and they're everywhere and they're too popular now, and that's when people start to come for them.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that there was a ton of negative press about them before this. I don't, they're not celebrities that I typically like follow or like, I'm not a huge fan of like Deadpool or anything like that. I didn't watch Gossip Girl, but I don't remember there being a lot of negative press about either one of them. And I don't remember there being just a lot of press about them in general. I feel like they kind of were a more private Hollywood couple. I don't remember them being in the headlines a lot. But my fear with this is that if these allegations are true, which again, we probably will never know, and, it does end up coming out in the end in Justin's favor, it's really going to set a precedent for victims coming forward in the future. And that is unfortunate if it's true and these things took place. The other thing I don't find super likely is, his narrative is really riding on this idea of her trying to take over the film and her essentially making up these allegations in order to do that. When you look at the power dynamic in the industry as a whole, I don't see that being a necessity for her in order to do that, if that makes sense. I don't see where you would risk fabricating sexual harassment allegations in order to try to gain control of a project. I just don't.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a strong enough motive for her.
No. I mean, the risk of that alone just doesn't seem it just doesn't seem likely to me that that's the route someone would take.
No, it doesn't seem likely to me either. Yeah. And I mean, maybe it was like, she put up with stuff for a really long time, and then, push came to shove, and finally she was like, you know what, that's it. I'm coming clean about all of these things, right. At the very least. But no, that doesn't seem, the whole thing seems just, I don't understand a lot of it.
Right.
I feel like I keep hearing more and more information. I'm like, none of this makes sense, really.
Well, and the other thing that I find interesting is, he kind of made this like preemptive strike. If we're to believe that, the smear campaign really happened, it's like, this was something that he did, ahead of anything coming out, in fear that people would wonder why they weren't doing press together. That's the other thing that I find compelling, is that it seems like the majority of the cast and crew were behind Blake because nobody wanted to do press with him.
Yeah.
And he sort of blamed that on this idea that he wanted to promote the movie and really dig into the domestic violence and highlight survivors and all of this, and he didn't like the way Blake was promoting it with, it's go see with your girlfriends and wear florals and all that, and felt like that was an insensitive take.
Yeah, I heard that a lot, that a lot of people were like, she wore a lot of flowers. People kept mentioning the flowers, about how that was all she talked about. But I was like, maybe she just didn't know.
Well, but that was
a really uncomfortable thing. I didn't know what the hell to talk about.
No, what it was is Sony's the distributor of the movie. Sony puts together the marketing and press strategy. And they have those documents where it's laid out in
what she has to do.
The marketing strategy from Sony, that they want to focus on the lighter heartedness of it.
Yeah.
In order to, because they didn't want it to feel like it was going to be triggering to people. They want people to see the movie.
Watch it, yeah.
And
it almost felt like they were marketing it as a romance story.
And
a love story.
Yes, because part of that too, and this was, I can't remember if I read this or if I heard this on a podcast, but whoever was talking about it did a little bit of research into how the book was marketed and a lot of reviews on the book. The book is a romance novel with underlying themes of domestic violence.
Oh, wow.
So Sony could have been mirroring the book, also trying to draw in the book audience to see the movie.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like that doesn't make sense to me, that he's like saying all of that. And it's like, well, Blake was just doing what, and that's what she says. I was just doing what Sony laid out in the marketing strategy. And the other example,
God, idiots who think Blake Lively is really the one to blame for, like, you know what, I'm gonna mastermind this whole thing just to talk about the flowers. Like she has any decisions over that, ultimately.
And the example that came up for me was, do you think that Margot Robbie wanted to dress like Barbie for a month leading up to the that wasn't her decision.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, listen, I'm not saying that Blake wasn't doing some of these things that Justin is saying. I'm sure,
yeah,
I'm sure those things happen on movie sets all the time, where actors and other people try to overstep and like want to try to produce and rewrite scenes. I think it happens all the time.
That doesn't cancel out harassment.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. And then, he released that video, which I just don't, and he's saying it, and somewhere in the lawsuit it says, about how she was the one breaking character and improvising kissing scenes. That video is very clear to me that he's the one trying to kiss her. She's like, oh, let's just talk. We should just be talking. He's the one that breaks character and starts talking about her and Ryan and then him and his wife. And I'm just like, I don't really see how this is in any way backing up your claim. I don't understand. I mean, it's not glaringly, this or that really with either of them, but there's a couple of things that came up in his lawsuit where I'm like, well, you said this, but the video shows this. And the only thing I can think of as far as like, evidence is like, they do have obviously video footage of the scenes and things. I mean, obviously there's not going to be video footage of them just like on set when they're not filming, but it's like, I don't know how much they'll be able to get from what has been filmed. But yeah, and I don't know. One of her things was, no coming into my trailer when I'm, undressed or like breastfeeding. There is one text that she sent saying, I'm pumping if you want to come in and run lines. Well, pumping is very different from breastfeeding. You can be completely covered up when you're pumping. And just because she said it one time doesn't also make it okay for you to just come in whenever you want.
Yeah, it's consent. Did she give you consent to come in? Great. If she didn't, then stay out of there.
Yeah. And it's
regardless of what she's doing, honestly.
Yeah. And so, that's one of those things where all those kind of things are going to be he said, she said. And it's like, I don't see any way where they're going to be able to prove this or that on a lot of those things. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so much. I mean, I could go on and on and on for days. There's so much. There's so many moving parts and there's just so much. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But
Did she start this off by suing him?
So she started it off by filing the complaint. Yes.
And what is, when you file a complaint, what is your intent or hope to result from that?
Basically what she did is, it's a particular process, and I would imagine it's like state to state. It's called like a right to sue letter. That's another thing that's like really interesting, is that in Justin's I think it was in his lawsuit against the New York Times, he states in his lawyers put in this lawsuit that Blake not actually filing the lawsuit and just like doing the complaint with the Civil Rights Department was a strategy so that she wouldn't be exposed to like discovery. But it's
not a trial.
No, she has to do that before she can file the lawsuit. It's like a preemptive thing you have to do, file this like right to sue letter. It gets filed as a complaint with the Civil Rights Department there, and it has to go through the process before you can actually file the lawsuit. So yeah, that was in his lawsuit to the New York Times, or his lawyers, who should know this and clearly do. I don't know why they were saying that was a strategy on her part so she wouldn't be subject to any discovery. And literally I think her lawsuit was filed like the next day after that lawsuit was filed and came out. And it's like, yeah, it was a required process. So that was the first thing that happened. Actually, the publicist lawsuit may have been first. I think the publicist lawsuit was first. And that's another thing too, is like this publicist, I feel like that's compelling in and of itself. Justin's original publicist had this woman that was working for her, Jennifer Abel, and Jennifer Abel was the point person. So she was the one communicating with Justin and Jamie Heath throughout this whole process. And then they hired this crisis PR, this Melissa Nathan, who's the crisis PR woman. And Jennifer Abel and Melissa Nathan have this whole conspiracy where Jennifer Abel's going to quit that company and start her own firm, and they're going to steal all of this woman's clients. And this is all in the emails and text exchanges that they're doing this and launching this whole smear campaign. And then we're going to pin it on the publicist, the woman who owns the firm. So she's suing them, being like, I had no idea that any of this was going on, like that they were doing any of this, and they're trying to pin it on her, anything wrong that they're doing, and they're going to steal her clients, and this woman's going to start her own firm. And to me, that's like, I mean, I don't know. So I think it's very clear that the smear campaign happened. If you read these exchanges, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And the fact that this woman is like, I'm suing them, and they were doing all this behind my back, trying to pin it on me. And yeah, I don't know. It's just.
Sounds like a hot mess.
It's a hot mess. Damn. It really is.
Yeah, it's probably going to go on forever, too.
Oh, forever. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, I think it was, the reason that Blake even filed is because, she felt like she had to at that point, because she had to cancel or, like, bow out of hosting Saturday Night Live because things were so bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang.
And so, she's suing obviously for like lost wages and like opportunities and all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think she felt backed into a corner because, the smear campaign had turned the media completely against her. And yeah, I mean, And I remember being like, what is all of this, like, suddenly all this stuff, and like all of these old interviews coming up that like, I mean, there was just all this stuff, and it literally came out of nowhere. And it was just like, what is going on? And I'm sorry, but that's not organic. That's not I just don't. So anyway, I don't know. And one thing I was listening to too, they were talking about, you know, if this crisis PR team had just focused on putting out positive press about Justin, there may not have even been grounds for a retaliation lawsuit.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, why? Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, the guy gives me the ick, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just because now I'm biased because of all this that's come out, but
yeah. I don't know. It's certainly, it's interesting. And I mean, if you're somebody who's interested in the law at all or anything, I mean, I definitely recommend reading the lawsuits. I mean, it's a lot, but it's just wild.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
I don't know.
Well, good luck to Blake Lively. Yeah, that's going to be a long, hellish road.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
And it's too bad that, like, now that movie is not going to get any, notice for what it was. It's
no
just
one's going to remember the movie for what.
Yeah.
I mean, and it did great.
Yeah.
It did great. It made a ton of money. You know, it really did well. But yeah, no one's going to remember. Yeah, the meaning of the movie has been completely lost now,
right,
because it's all of this, and, I feel bad for the other people that were involved in the project too. It's like, oh God. So
I know, because then they have to choose sides.
And just like that they have to be attached
or
to
deal
this
with
now.
It. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
It's unfortunate, but
dang.
Anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens, and it'll be really interesting if it goes to trial. I feel like it will, but
yeah,
we'll see. I don't know.
Well, keep us updated.
I'll keep you updated. I'll keep you updated in a very short-winded, concise kind of way.
You always do. You always do. She's thorough, ladies and gentlemen. She's thorough.